Senior ministers prepare to finalise details of the roadmap out of lockdown in England. Relief for this family at the first announced change. Care home residents in England will be allowed one regular visitor from the 8th of March.
It's wonderful that one of us will be able to go in and hold a hand, and that will make a whole difference to us as a whole family.
We'll be asking what else we might expect from Boris Johnson's much anticipated speech. Also tonight, Prince Charles visits his father, the Duke of Edinburgh, in hospital, where he's been treated since Tuesday. In Myanmar, at least 2 people are killed by security forces in the deadliest protests yet against the military coup. And resignation from the Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny as he loses his appeal against 2.5 years in prison. Good evening. Senior ministers are expected to meet tomorrow to finalise details of the full plan for easing lockdown in England, which will be announced by the Prime Minister on Monday. In the first confirmed relaxation of the rules, care home residents in England will be allowed to choose one person to visit them regularly from the 8th of March. They'll be able to meet indoors and be allowed to hold hands, but visitors must wear personal protective equipment and be tested before entering the home. Our health correspondent Anna Collinson has more.
A moment of relief during a dark year for 83-year-old Barbara Abrams. This is the closest her family have been allowed to get to her while visiting her care home in Stockport because of COVID restrictions.
That lack of physical contact has been really difficult for us. My poor mum, her health, both physically and mentally, has really deteriorated, particularly in the since Christmas. I think it was like the straw that broke the camel's back.
But now a sign of hope. From the 8th of March, care home residents in England will be allowed to pick one person to visit them regularly indoors. With the government preparing to reveal its roadmap for easing lockdown on Monday, this announcement has been called the first step to getting back to where we want to be. There are some rules. It has to be the same visitor every time. Holding hands is allowed, but there can be no kissing or hugging. The visitor must be tested before entering the home, and they must wear PPE while inside. It's welcome news for many families, but too late for those who've lost loved ones during the pandemic.
We have tried everything we possibly can, and what you have to remember is people in our services have very complex healthcare needs, and so therefore our primary duty has always been, through all the guidance we get, is to keep them safe and to keep our staff safe.
From early March, residents in Scottish care homes will be allowed 2 visitors. In Northern Ireland and Wales, the advice varies between individual homes. Scientists say a slow and steady approach is needed.
There are some families who haven't seen their loved ones in care homes since March, so I really welcome that announcement. I would say we still have to be cautious. Let's not forget that the NHS has treated over 100,000 severely ill patients in the last month, and we still have almost 20,000 people in hospital.
Jill has 2 siblings and says it's unlikely she'll be the chosen visitor because she lives the furthest away, but she doesn't mind.
It's wonderful that one of us will be able to go in and hold a hand, and that will make a whole difference to us as a whole family.
Anna Collinson, BBC News.
Well, we can speak now to our political correspondent, Helen Catt. Helen, will get more details about easing lockdown in England on Monday. Any signs as to what is going to be said?
Well, Boris Johnson has said that he wants this route out of lockdown to be cautious but irreversible. We also know that he said his top priority is getting all children back into school, and the date that was set for that was March the 8th. There's increasing confidence this week in government that that date will be met. So where does the roadmap go beyond that? Well, Downing Street sources say that an absolute priority is finding ways of allowing families to start seeing each other once again, to allow more social contact. Now, we understand that in the first instance that is likely to be outdoors because that's where the virus is less likely to spread. One of the options being looked at is allowing 2 households to meet up outdoors, and reports on when that might be suggest, well, that could be around Easter Easter time, either before or around, which is the very, very start of April this year. Now, in terms of the broad direction, we know that they are looking at things like outdoor recreation, then things like non-essential retail, then things like hospitality. But Number 10 say that those final details are still being nailed down this weekend. Senior ministers will meet tomorrow morning, and then Boris Johnson will set out the plan publicly on Monday.
Helen, thank you. Helen Catt there. Let's take a look now at the latest government figures. And there were 10,406 new infections recorded in the latest 24-hour period. An average of 11,224 new cases were recorded per day in the last week. 18,462 people are in hospital with coronavirus across the UK. In the last 24 hours, 445 deaths have been recorded. That's people who died within 28 days of a positive COVID test. On average, 494 deaths were announced every day in the past week. The total number of people who've died is 120,365. More than 370,000 people had their first dose of one of the approved COVID-19 vaccines in the latest 24-hour period, and that takes the total who've now had their first jab to over 17.2 million people. The Prince of Wales has been to the hospital in London where his father, the Duke of Edinburgh, is currently being treated after feeling unwell. Prince Charles arrived this afternoon. His father was admitted to the King Edward VII Hospital on Tuesday evening as a precautionary measure. Well, our royal correspondent Daniela Ralph is outside the hospital for us now. Daniela, what's the latest?
Well, Rita, as we've just seen, the Prince of Wales came to see his father this afternoon. He was driven from his Highgrove estate to central London. That's a journey of around 90 miles. He spent just over half an hour inside the hospital before leaving again and heading back to Gloucestershire. Now, this is a private hospital, and the COVID guidelines here at the moment do say that family visits shouldn't happen except in exceptional circumstances. But at this stage, we don't have any update on the health of the Duke of Edinburgh. He is spending his 5th night in hospital here. And today, Buckingham Palace have reiterated their most recent statements, saying that he's being kept in hospital out of an abundance of caution and that he remains in good spirits.
Daniela, thank you. Daniela Ralph there. Emergency medical workers in Myanmar say at least 2 people have been killed and several others injured during protests at the arrest of the democratically elected leader Aung San Suu Kyi in a military coup. Witnesses say that police in Myanmar's second city, Mandalay, used live ammunition to disperse the crowd during a shipyard strike. Our Southeast Asia correspondent Jonathan Head reports.
The military has promised patience with those protesting against its coup, but there was little sign of it here in Mandalay. The police had gone in to disperse striking ship workers and moved quickly from using tear gas and rubber bullets to live rounds. The shooting was caught on camera by this terrified bystander. "Please don't shoot, don't let it happen," she says. 2 people were killed, several more sustained gunshot injuries. Is this an escalation by the military junta? That isn't clear. In Yangon, protesters were mostly left alone by the security forces today as they pressed their demands for the elected government of Aung San Suu Kyi to be released and reinstated. They've been holding memorials too for 20-year-old Nyat Twet Twet Kine. She was the first protester to die, adding fuel to a wave of public fury against the military, which is still sweeping across Myanmar. The coup leaders, though, seem prepared to wait them out, while going in at night to arrest increasing numbers of those organising and funding the movement. "We young people have our dreams," said 27-year-old Kin Tway, "but everything is gone now. Everything we hoped for is being destroyed." They're trying to cripple the military's authority with these protests to show that they cannot govern. But how much longer can they keep this up? Jonathan Head, BBC News.
The Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny was back in court today to appeal against the prison sentence he'd received earlier this month. The appeal was rejected and Mr. Navalny will go to prison for 2.5 years. The jailing of Russia's most prominent opposition activist has been condemned outside Russia and could lead to a new round of Western sanctions against Moscow. Our Moscow correspondent Steve Rosenberg reports.
Back in court, the Kremlin's most vocal critic, Russia's most famous prisoner. Alexei Navalny tried to be upbeat, but his appeal was rejected. The result, 2.5 years in prison for fraud and parole violations, charges widely seen as politically motivated. This was Mr. Navalny a month ago, flying home after recovering in Germany from being poisoned in Siberia. He was arrested on arrival. That sparked nationwide protests. But the Russian authorities were in no mood to listen. And there's been a cold response here to international criticism. This week, the Kremlin rejected a ruling by the European Court of Human Rights that Mr. Navalny should be freed. As for talk of more Western sanctions, the Kremlin has been exploiting that to its own benefit.
In Vladimir Putin's Russia, this is how it works. Western criticism over the jailing of Mr. Navalny, Western pressure, Western sanctions. The Kremlin takes that and holds it up to the Russian people and says, look, we told you so. The West has got it in for Russia. In other words, the authorities try to use this to bolster their claim that this is a country under siege.
And that is precisely the message in the Russian state media.
Basically, West is not interested in Navalny. West is just willing to see Russia destroyed. And that's the major idea that we have in Russia.
Blaming the West is an attempt to distract attention from problems here.
We are not. Yes, of course, we do have our problems, but they cannot be even compared with problems that you have.
The Kremlin will be hoping that this problem of a rival and a challenger has been dealt with once and for all. Steve Rosenberg, BBC News, Moscow.
A 21-year-old swimming teacher has become the youngest woman to row solo across the Atlantic Ocean. Jasmine Harrison from Thirsk in North Yorkshire set off from the Canary Islands in December, embarking on a 3,000-mile journey to Antigua that took a total of 70 days, 3 hours and 48 minutes. With all the rest of the sport now, here's Ollie Foster at the BBC Sports Centre. Ollie.
Evening, Rita. We're into the final weekend at the Australian Open. Naomi Osaka has won a 4th Grand Slam singles title. The Japanese player beat the American Jennifer Brady in straight sets to be crowned champion for a 2nd time in Melbourne. Adam Wilde reports.
At a time where little in tennis has felt certain, the threat of Naomi Osaka is perhaps one of the few constants. But for a tournament that has taken place against the odds, it felt fitting that here also was a finalist that few expected. Jennifer Brady spent her first 2 weeks in Australia in isolation, forced to practice in a hotel room. Yet here she was holding her nerve in a first Grand Slam final.
Made it.
But from lockdown, she was before long a set down, a momentary misjudgment, and against an opponent like Osaka, that rarely goes unpunished. Osaka took the first set with the very next point, and from there she accelerated like only a player of her quality can. Ruthless, relentless, offering Brady little chance, serving out the match and the tournament.
I feel like playing a Grand Slam right now is a super privilege, and it's something that I won't take for granted, so thank you for this opportunity.
At just 23, this is already Naomi Osaka's 4th Grand Slam title. An uncertain year, an uncertain tournament, but you can be sure Osaka will win more. Adam Wilde, BBC News.
Today's Premier League goals are coming up on Match of the Day after the news, but if you want the results, stay right there. Everton have won at Anfield for the first time since 1999. They beat Liverpool 2-0 in the Merseyside derby. That's 4 league defeats in a row for the champions. There were draws at Southampton and Burnley. Fulham beat Sheffield United. Wins for Aberdeen, Hibernian and St Johnstone. In the Scottish Premiership, St Mirren drew with Livingston. Rangers and Celtic both play tomorrow. Now, there was a bizarre end to Exeter Chiefs' match against Northampton Saints in the Rugby Union Premiership. Sam Simmons had this conversion to win it for the champions, but he took too long to kick the ball after starting his run-up, and Saints players managed to get there first. They won 13-12. Also in the Premiership, there were wins for Harlequins and Leicester, and in the Pro 14, victories for Scarlets, Ospreys, Connacht and Munster. The two-time Rugby World Cup winner and one of the game's greatest players, Dan Carter, has retired at the age of 38. The New Zealand fly half was capped 112 times and helped the All Blacks become world champions in 2011 and 2015. He scored a record 1,598 Test points during his international career. Great Britain's men have qualified for next year's European Basketball Championship. They beat Germany in the final seconds in Podgorica. The score was tied at 81-all. But Luke Nelson was the hero. He scored the winning basket with the final play. That result, coupled with France's victory over Montenegro in the same group, means that GB qualify. Now, Sir Ben Ainsley is really up against it as he bids to reach next month's America's Cup. The four-time Olympic gold medalist is skippering Ineos Team UK in the final qualifying event, the Prada Cup. And though they won their first race today, they still trail the Italians' Luna Rossa 5-1 in Auckland. The first 7 will take on the holders, Team New Zealand. And you can actually watch the next 2 Prada Cup races live via the BBC Sport website from 3 o'clock tomorrow morning. Rita.
Thank you, Ollie. Well, that's all from us. But just before we go, the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, will be on the Andrew Marr Show tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock on BBC One. That's all from me, though. Good night.